Imagine breaking your arm 10,000 years ago. No hospital, no morphine, no scan to tell you exactly what's wrong. And yet, in many ways, your ancient ancestors may have understood something about that pain that modern medicine is only now starting to relearn. What if the thing keeping your pain alive isn't damage at all, but a warning system that never learned how to switch off? Pain feels simple. Something hurts, so something must be wrong. But is that actually true? Why do some people live with searing back pain even when scans show nothing torn, nothing broken, nothing structurally out of place? Why does an old injury sometimes ache years after it's fully healed? The answer isn't in your tissue, it's in your brain. And it's a story that starts long before hospitals, long before medicine, in a world where pain had one job: keep you alive long enough to reproduce. Start with what pain is actually for. Pain isn't a damage meter. It's an alarm system, and like any alarm system, it can be miscalibrated. This is the foundation of the work of Lorimer Moseley, a pain scientist based in Australia who has spent decades studying why people hurt. Moseley's research helped establish something that sounds almost backwards at first. Pain is not a direct readout of tissue damage. It's a decision made by the brain, based on how much danger it believes the body is in. Two people can have the exact same injury and experience wildly different amounts of pain because their brains are weighing different evidence: past experience, emotional state, even fear itself. Think about that for a moment. Have you ever stubbed your toe while stressed and felt it far more intensely than the actual damage would suggest? Have you ever gotten a small cut during a highly focused, calm moment and barely noticed it until later? That's not your imagination playing tricks on you. That's your brain constantly asking the same underlying question: how threatened am I right now? The pain you feel is the answer to that question, not a precise measurement of injury. Now go back to the world your ancestors lived in. For nearly the entire span of human existence, pain had an extremely direct relationship to threat. A wound from a predator attack, a broken bone from a fall, an infection from a cut. Every one of these was a genuine, immediate danger to survival. In that world, an alarm system tuned to react strongly to any sign of damage made perfect sense. The louder the alarm, the more likely you were to rest, protect the injury, and avoid further harm. Pain wasn't cruelty, it was insurance. This is where the work of Randolph Nesse becomes essential. Nesse, a pioneer of evolutionary medicine, has argued for decades that many of the body's most uncomfortable responses, pain, fever, nausea, even anxiety, aren't malfunctions at all. They're defenses shaped by natural selection because, on average, across thousands of generations, they improved survival. Nesse's core insight is unsettling in a useful way. The body isn't built to make you feel good. It's built to keep you alive, and sometimes those two goals point in completely different directions. Here's where it gets interesting, though. What happens when that ancient alarm system, built for a world of physical predators and constant injury risk, gets applied to modern life? What happens when a chronically stressed brain, worried about job security, relationship conflict, or financial pressure, still has the same threat detection machinery your ancestors used to survive a lion encounter? The evidence suggests something remarkable. Chronic pain can persist long after tissue has fully healed because the alarm system itself can become sensitized. Repeated pain signals can actually train the nervous system to become more reactive over time, not less. Neuroscientist Irene Tracey, whose work at Oxford has focused heavily on how the brain processes and represents pain, has used brain imaging to show that chronic pain often involves real, measurable changes in the nervous system. Changes that make the alarm louder and more persistent even when the original danger is gone. In other words, pain can become its own disease, separate from whatever originally caused it. This reframes something important. Have you ever wondered why rest alone doesn't always fix long-term pain? Why some people recover fully from a serious injury, while others develop pain that lingers for years afterward, even with a similar diagnosis? Part of the answer may lie in how the nervous system learns. Just as ancient humans needed strong, fast pain responses to survive predators and rough terrain, the modern nervous system can accidentally learn to treat ordinary movement, or even emotional stress, as a threat worth loud warning signals long after any actual physical danger has passed. So what did ancient humans understand about this, even without any of the science to explain it? Consider how differently pain was likely treated in small hunter-gatherer communities. Injuries were rarely faced alone. Recovery happened within a group, surrounded by people who shared food, protection, and physical closeness. Modern research on pain increasingly points to something ancient communities seem to intuitively practice. Safety reduces pain. When the brain senses that a person is protected, supported, and not facing additional danger, its threat calculation shifts. The alarm doesn't need to scream as loudly because the underlying question, "How threatened am I?" receives a calmer answer. Compare that to a common experience in modern medicine: isolation, uncertainty, long waits for diagnosis, being told a scan looks normal despite real pain. All of these can inadvertently increase the sense of threat a person feels even without anyone intending harm. Ancient humans didn't have MRI machines, but they may have had something modern healthcare sometimes lacks: a nervous system reassured by consistent physical closeness, clear social roles during recovery, and rarely, if ever, facing an injury utterly alone. There's another layer here worth sitting with. Ancient humans lived with an enormous amount of unavoidable physical discomfort simply as a baseline of daily life. Sore muscles from walking miles, scrapes and bruises from foraging, minor infections without antibiotics. In that environment, distinguishing between background discomfort and urgent danger was a matter of survival efficiency. A body that reacted to every small ache as a 5-alarm emergency would have exhausted itself constantly. Some pain had to be tolerated, filed away as normal, so the body could keep functioning. Modern life has almost the opposite problem. Physical discomfort is rare enough that when it does show up, it can feel unusually alarming, precisely because it's unfamiliar. A single day of unexplained back pain can trigger anxious searching, worst-case assumptions, and hypervigilance, and that anxiety itself can amplify the pain signal further. Moseley's research has shown this loop directly. Fear of pain can make pain worse, and worse pain can increase fear, creating a cycle that has little to do with the original injury and everything to do with how the brain is interpreting ongoing signals. So here's the strange, almost hopeful implication buried in all of this. If pain is partly a decision made by a threat-monitoring brain rather than a fixed readout of damage, then the story your brain tells about safety matters enormously. This isn't the same as saying pain is imaginary. It absolutely is not. But it does mean that a nervous system calibrated by ancient survival pressures can be recalibrated. Education about how pain actually works, movement paced carefully rather than avoided entirely, social support during recovery, and a reduction in fear itself have all shown real, measurable effects in modern pain treatment approaches. That's a strange kind of full circle. Ancient humans, surrounded by community, physically active by necessity, and rarely isolated during recovery, may have unintentionally created conditions that kept their pain alarm system calibrated closer to its intended purpose. Modern life, for all its medical advances, sometimes strips away exactly those conditions. Isolation replacing community, stillness replacing movement, uncertainty replacing reassurance, and in doing so, may inadvertently turn the volume up on an alarm that was only ever meant to protect, not to persist. Consider how this plays out in a very ordinary modern scenario. Someone tweaks their lower back lifting a box. The pain is real and sharp at first, exactly as it should be. But then imagine that person is told to avoid all movement, warned about worst-case scenarios, and left waiting weeks for a specialist appointment with no clear answers in between. During that waiting period, the brain isn't just tracking the original injury, it's tracking uncertainty, fear, and isolation, all of which register as additional threat. By the time that person finally gets treatment, the pain may have grown far beyond what the original tissue damage would predict, not because the injury worsened, but because the alarm system kept escalating in response to everything surrounding it. Now imagine the same injury happening within a small hunter-gatherer band thousands of years ago. There was no waiting room, no uncertainty about whether help was coming, no isolation from the group. The injured person would have been surrounded almost immediately, by people who understood exactly what had happened, offered practical support, and continued to include them in the rhythm of daily life as soon as they were able. The nervous system in that scenario receives a very different set of signals. You are safe, you are supported, and recovery is expected. That's not a minor detail. According to Moseley's research on pain and threat perception, this kind of contextual safety can directly influence how intensely pain is experienced, independent of the physical injury itself. This idea also reshapes how you might think about a phrase often used dismissively: "It's all in your head." Tracey's imaging work has shown that pain absolutely does involve the head, in the most literal sense, because the brain is where pain is ultimately constructed. But that doesn't make it less real. It makes it more revealing. A headache brought on by stress isn't fake pain pretending to be real pain. It's the same alarm system responding to a threat that happens to be psychological rather than physical. Ancient humans didn't need a neuroscience lab to sense this connection. Chronic worry, social conflict within a tribe, or the stress of scarcity likely produced physical symptoms long before anyone had a name for the mind-body link. What's changed isn't the mechanism. What's changed is the number and type of modern stressors constantly feeding that same ancient alarm. There's a reason this matters beyond curiosity. Pain treatment approaches that incorporate Moseley's pain education research, alongside gradual movement and reduced fear, have shown measurably better outcomes for many people with persistent pain than approaches focused solely on the physical injury site. This isn't a rejection of modern medicine. It's a return, in some ways, to something ancient communities seem to understand instinctively. The body heals differently when it feels safe than when it feels threatened, and pain is one of the clearest windows into which of those two states the nervous system believes it's in. None of this means you should ignore pain or assume every ache is simply in your head and dismissible. Pain is real, and it deserves real attention. But understanding where that alarm came from and what it was originally built to do can change the way you respond to it. The next time discomfort lingers longer than it seems like it should, it might be worth asking not just what's damaged, but what is my nervous system still treating as a threat? Because somewhere underneath the scans and the diagnoses, there's still an ancient alarm system doing exactly what it was built to do, just occasionally forgetting that the danger passed a long time ago.